everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of Discovering Breaking Bad. Today, the episode I'm going to be talking about is Cancer Man, wherein pretty much confirms my estimate in the previous episode where I guessed that Walt was going to tell Skyler that he had cancer, and not that he had just killed someone. So, yay for me! One estimate in the bag. Okay, but anyway, let's get right into it. As far as some favorite moments from this episode, the first one would actually be really what was essentially the beginning of the episode, the barbecue. Like the barbecue itself and what happens, I really liked it for, other than the fact that Walt comes out and reveals to everyone about, him having cancer. I mean, that was part of it. But really, what really made that an important part of this episode for me was the fact that it made Hank and Marie feel like real people for the first time since the first episode to me. Now, I know that in previous episodes, the characters had been developed a little bit more. They had their moments here or there, but it bothered me for some reason. I'm not entirely sure why. I mean, people have already told me and commented and explained, it's needed for the background story so that they can further develop these characters. But for some reason, it always felt forced to me. And honestly, I don't know why. But in the barbecue, it really makes Hank and Marie feel more human, feel more like people than just plot points, basically. So I really liked that, and it made them feel real, and it actually, strangely enough, in just that short amount of time, made them feel relatable to me. So I really appreciate that, and I really liked that. Now, my second favorite part of this episode was Jesse's hallucination after he does some of the meth that him and Walt cooked. The moment where he's looking out the window and he sees these two gigantic bikers get off of these motorcycles, one holding a machete and the other a freaking grenade. And when he runs out of the house terrified, I mean, honest to God, when I was watching that part of the episode, I was just like, holy crap, what's going to happen? And then it's revealed, and I thought it had to be something like either they just weren't there at all, but they were just a couple of Mormon boys. A couple of Mormon boys like tapping on the door. But in his head he hears like these deathly echoes of these gigantic men that are going to just tear him limb from limb. I love that part of the episode. It was just phenomenal. Now, my next favorite part of this episode was actually a continuation of that when we meet Jesse's seemingly perfect family. It's the young boy, I don't remember his name, I think it's Jake, maybe? And Jesse's parents, which we don't know at the time, but like they're talking at the table, seem like, just a very nice family. And then it's revealed that, they're Jesse's parents, which I kind of assumed because the camera was on them for a few minutes with nothing happening. I was just like, where is this going? They're they're nice people, but they're very boring. And so, like, the entire part of Jesse interacting with them, like, he's seemingly trying to make amends with his family, and then showing that they aren't perfect. It was like, his parents have their own issues. Jesse has a lot of issues, obviously. And then showing that, this perfect little boy that is his little brother isn't so perfect when we find out that, the joint they find in Jesse's room is in fact the little kids. So I really like that, and I like the way that they played out those family dynamics. Since the show goes on for 5 seasons, I can only assume that we're going to see more of his family at some point. I don't know how much, but I'm interested to see how they will play as the show goes on and as Jesse undoubtedly develops as a character. So I really like that, and I really like that part of the episode, introducing them. And my final favorite part of this epishave Walt getting, at first I wanted to say he sort of gets revenge, but he doesn't really have anything to get revenge on, but it's the guy with the Kenn wins license plate I mean, the guy is a complete douche, complete jerk, just like blabbing everywhere, saying horrible things, completely full of himself. And, I mean, it's obvious. I mean, I hated him from the moment he appeared on screen. It's obvious that Walt does too. And then right at the end, Walt gets out of his car, sees the guy, and as the guy walks into the gas station, Walt goes up, pops the guy's hood, and fries the battery on his car to where it goes up in flames and explodes. Now, this is one of my favorite parts for two reasons. The most obvious of which is that I hated the guy. Like, I don't know if he's going to appear in the show anymore. I also don't care if he does. But he was a complete douche, and I'm glad that happened to him. It needs to happen to more people, in my personal opinion. But I really appreciated that. Now, the second part about it was, I think that this was a big turning point. I mean, Walt's had a lot of huge moments, especially where he killed someone. But even that, like, he killed, even the previous episode, he killed someone because he knew that Domingo was going to kill him. He knew he was going to kill him. But this was just pure, unadulterated hatred for this guy who, in reality, didn't do anything to Walt other than take his parking place. I mean, that's literally all he actually did to Walt. So, yeah, it's just the fact that Walt took vengeance on him for that, and what I can only assume is just, like, you know, the guy's douchey personality. I don't know what to think of that yet, and that's what made me really like that moment, because it really makes me feel torn, and is really making me, you know, making me concerned for the character of Walt. Like, I mean, I knew he was sort of going on the downward spiral, but if he's just gonna be, is vindictive the right word? If he's gonna be becoming, like, so vindictive so quickly, I'm really interested to see what's going to happen to him, like, just in the next few episodes and what's left of this first season. I'm legitimately interested to find out how that's going to play out. And I know that people have said that these the first several episodes were slow, and I've agreed with them. But starting with this one, this is the first episode since the first that really just felt full, like full to me. I think looking back, I probably should have covered both the second and third episodes, the Cats in the Bag and the Bags in the River. Probably should have looked at those both together in the same viewing, because that would have probably made them seem, excuse me, more of one whole, since they're obviously a two-parter, essentially. But yeah, this is, I really liked this episode overall, and even though, I mean, it was slow action-wise, I guess, story-wise, it was really, really good, and I liked the way that it that it developed everyone, and the way it developed Walt, the way it developed other characters. I really liked that, and we're even sort of getting along the way to, I guess, the point where Walt will end up joining back together with Jesse, and they start cooking meth again. I don't know when it's going to happen, but obviously it's going to, because this show lasts 5 seasons. I guess I sort of gave my synopsis on the entire episode right there, and skipping the quote of the episode, which honestly, this was sort of a hard one for me to pick, because sort of like the previous episode, there weren't a lot of things that were particularly quote-worthy, but when I thought back on it, there was one particular line that really stuck with me, and I think maybe I didn't remember it at first because it made me sad. And it's a line that Walt Jr. says, I think it's near the end of the episode, and it's basically Walt and Skylar are talking about you know, the financial issues. Walt doesn't want to spend all the money that would be required for him to go through these treatments in order to be just treated, not even cured, but treated as far as his cancer goes. And he says he doesn't want to let their emotions run them, essentially. And then Walt Jr. just turns around from watching the TV, and he's been very silent almost the entire episode since he found out what was like that Walt has cancer, that his dad has cancer. And the line Walt Jr. says, "Then why don't you just fucking die already? Just give up and die. And that moment was just a punch in the gut. I mean, obviously for for Walt, the dad, as a character, but, me being the audience, that was just, I knew that Walt Jr. was upset, but to say something like that to your dad, it's heartbreaking. And especially with, how good their relationship was beforehand, before this big news came out. And I'm sure it's just a temporary thing, that they're going to make amends, that Walt Jr. Walt will hopefully have a talk, and they'll come to terms with this in some form, and they'll move on, and their relationship can start to rebuild. But like I said, just that moment right there was just so sad, such a punch in the gut. That line was just really, really powerful, and yeah, that was just really rough. But as I said previously, this was probably the best episode since the first episode, in my opinion. We have 3 left in this season, I believe, and I can only assume it's going to get better from here. So I'm really looking forward to the next episode. I don't know what the name of it is. I forgot to look beforehand, but I'll put the title right here for anyone that doesn't know. And everyone, thank you very much for joining me on this. I hope you liked hearing what I had to say about this episode. Let me know what you think about this particular episode. Did it hit you in the same way that it did me? Was this like as far as the beginning of the show goes, was this your favorite episode since the beginning? Or, where does it stand? It's like, were there any other moments that you found particularly awesome, or any lines that should have been the best of this episode? Just let me know what you think. And again, everyone, thank you for joining me, and I will see you next time on the next episode of Discovering Breaking Bad.